what can you guys introduce yourselves?
I'm Michelle Rivera.
Okay.
And I'm Katie Warren.
Okay, perfect. So we already talked about this a little bit, but we're going to start by talking about the aggressive nature of porn and kind of how, like, a lot of times on, like, certain porn websites, like, it is very fetishized. I think that's a word that, like, the man is dominant and, like, asserting his power over women, and this has just become so normalized and natural, like, in the porn industry. So what do you guys think about that?
I feel like porn has always been incredibly unrealistic, and whether you look for videos of what's happened in your own experience versus something that you know will never happen to you, it's just there's always going to be this standard there's always going to be this standard that people have when going into having sex with whoever they want to have sex with.
Yeah, I agree with that. I feel like it's very I think it's very, like, unreal, like, what they show, and, like, a lot of times people use this, especially in areas that they don't have, like, a lot of, like, comprehensive sex ed and everything. They use this as almost, like, what they view just, like, to what sex is, and they use it almost as, like, a health class or whatever.
Right, like a guide.
Yeah, but it is so, like, unreal and, like, in so many ways. Like, first of all, just, like, how it portrays women, like, women's bodies and stuff like that, how it portrays, like, the act of, like, pleasure in sex and everything. And, yeah, like, there's just, like, a lot of it where, like, the man is dominating the women. But, yeah, like, it's just, and I feel like it can be very aggressive, and there, like, can be a lot of different elements of almost, like, rape that are embedded in, like, just normal sex videos.
And I feel like the fake aspects that go into those videos can sort of seep through into someone's everyday life by, you know, if you watch a video where this lady is being forced to be submissive by a man, you might also, you know, eventually start to think, oh, women are supposed to be submissive all the time.
Yes, exactly.
And that's another issue in a lot of households in today's society.
No, I was going to say the same thing where it, like, it's not just sex where it's, like, men are dominant, women are submissive. It, like, takes on, like, a whole new, like, gender role where it's just, like, all throughout society, like, women are supposed to be below men.
Right.
So, yeah, I definitely see that. Why do we think that women who embrace their sexuality are so stigmatized? So, like, obviously, like, female masturbation is so, like, just not talked about or not, like, embraced at all. And, like, there's, of course, like, slut shaming and things like that. Like, obviously that's frustrating, but why do we think that happens?
I think it's because women have always been seen as innocent and fragile, and I feel like men and maybe some, you know, women themselves view sex in such a, you know, negative light, and there's not enough communication that goes on about the topic. So when people think, you know, masturbation, they think disgusting, they think private, they think it doesn't need to be spoken about. And when people decide to slut shame, it's seen as women aren't supposed to be doing that because you're supposed to save yourself for a man when it comes to marrying him.
It's so frustrating too, like, especially with, like, modern, like, hookup culture and everything, and it's like women are, like, the commodity, and men want women to be sexual and to want to have sex with them, but then, like, when they actually do those things, then they're, like, shamed for it, and it, like, really just doesn't make any sense because, I don't know, it kind of seems like there is no benefit for women because, I mean, even when you are, like, not sexually active or, like, not, you know what I mean, like, there's shame in, like, all aspects of that, I feel. How the social construct of virginity affects young women. Do you guys want to talk about that?
I think a lot of them are being misinformed when they're little about what it's like to, like, either have sex or lose your virginity. So then they're like, oh, well, then depending on what kind of sex education they get, they might learn abstinence is the right way. So then they're like, well, now I have to save my virginity until I'm married.
Yeah, and like in the article that Mitra wrote, she talks about like how she talks about Indian sex life and everything, and like how they view virginity and everything, and like a lot of times like, you know, like the like misconstruct of like the hymen and everything, and how like it breaks when you know, lose your virginity or have sex for the first time, but that's like such like not like medically accurate, you know, like it can break and like tear like at any really point in your life, you know, just like from like exercising or doing stuff like that. But like that, I don't know, people see that as like the source of virginity, and like what you were saying with like the sex ed, like people are just like misinformed about that. I mean, obviously with like Roe v. Wade being overturned, like we have more, I don't know, firsthand experience with that, or just like we know a little bit more about that. But how do we think that and like criminalizing abortion relates to like increasing the surveillance of like a person's sexuality?
I definitely feel like the how Roe v. Wade, when it got overturned, it changed the lives of a whole bunch of women and practically children around the world, around the nation.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. And then I feel like it's also just like the government is now like surveilling people's sex lives just like to an increased extent, you know?
Right.
And like you see this with like abortion, and like surveilling, is that a word? Surveying? Yeah, surveying like a woman's body, but then also just like you see the surveillance of sex in like when gay marriage was illegal or things like that, you know? And like I feel like things that are, or even like with the criminalization of like sex work and everything.
Taking away abortion, the right to have an abortion, more affects minorities than it does any other race. And minorities also have less access to other contraceptives. So really, and then they're forced to have a child they didn't want. And then that child and them are going to continue that cycle of poverty. And the minorities are never going to get out of that.
Yeah, it just perpetuates that. We're gonna like really switching gears. Why is the idea of straight girls kissing so exploited? Because I mean, obviously, like it's like a fetish almost, like, and like you'll see on like porn sites. You know, we already talked about porn, but like this is just like a category that exists and everything, and like it's a little odd. What do you guys think of that?
I think it's because men have such a fragile masculinity that they think that if they watch any porn containing a guy, they're gonna be gay because they're seeing another man.
Yeah, and like also in like in part of this article that Jane Ward wrote, like she talks about like frats almost, and like the nature of like she talks about hazing and things like that, and how it's almost like, you know, like when guys slap each other's butts, or like they do things that are like almost like so sexual in order to prove that they're not gay.
Yeah.
It's like
it doesn't make
sense. It's so strange. Yes, exactly. Right. That's exactly what they do. And it's like,
and they label it as bromance, and that's normal for them. But if a gay man were to do something like that to them, then it'd be an entirely different
or like if
issue. One
of their like brothers, like frat brothers, was actually gay, like that, it would be a completely different
they
story.
Wouldn't do that to someone who was gay.
Yeah. It's weird. Well, that kind of goes into the next question. Like, are straight women... Sorry, I got something in my throat. But are straight women allowed to be more, like, sexually fluid than straight men? Because, like, going into what you guys were saying about, like, oh, they don't want to be gay, it just, like, creates... you know, being queer as, like, a negative connotation, like, something that they really don't want to do. And it's, I don't know, like, why does that occur? Like, I mean, I guess, like, just, like, natural stereotypes of, like, being like a part of the LGBT community, but like then why does that not necessarily exist for like a straight woman?
I feel like, yeah, it continues to tie back to the fragile masculinity that a lot of today's boys have inside them. I feel they've been taught, being gay is bad, you can't be gay. So then they don't feel like they can explore themselves. And a lot of people, once they do figure out that they have some sort of homosexual feelings, they push it down and don't want to talk about it. Mm-hmm. So I feel like it's more socially acceptable for a girl to do it because girls are seen as indecisive, as emotional, and impulsive. So it would be, normal for a girl to explore that homosexual side of herself before, actually finding herself than it would be for a guy, just because of the way the people have,
portrayed that.
Exactly.
Yeah, I feel like going off of that, like, girls are just so much more sexualized than guys. And so, like, you take, like, anything they do and they turn it into something that is, like, related to sex and everything. So, like, they are allowed to, like, embrace their sexuality more or be more, in quotes, like, fluid because they're already so sexualized. And it's not necessarily, like, a good thing because it all goes back to kind of, like, there's a different, like, light and, like, discourse whenever, like, in regards to, like, female sexuality and male sexuality. Very broad question, but should, like, sex work and, like, prostitution be criminalized?
No.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. I think, like, if you criminalize it, like, it's almost the same thing with abortion. It, like, doesn't stop it, like, right. Criminalizing doesn't stop it, like, if you criminalize abortion, okay, abortions are still going to occur, they're just going to be more unsafe, and they're going to impact people of, like, minorities, and people of, like, lower income more. The same with, like, sex work, like, criminalizing it obviously doesn't stop it, because it still exists, and it's illegal today, but when you make it illegal, it, like, you can't regulate it as much, so if someone, is, like, engaging in sex work or whatever, and they have clear boundaries or whatever, but someone steps past those boundaries, like, let's say they get raped or they, like, something happens that, like, they didn't consent to, or they get robbed or something like that. There's a lot that could happen, but now they can't go to the police and they can't get the help they need. Yeah, and, like, I feel like a lot of, like, why people want to make it illegal is because, sex workers are seen as, like, victims or whatever, but it's, like, if you really thought they were, like, in need of help or, like, victimized, then by making it illegal, we're creating all these barriers for them to actually get the so-called help, right.
Yes, and, sex work, it falls, like, there's a lot of different jobs that fall under that title.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if it's, like, all outlawed, which in America I don't think it is all outlawed.
I think in Las Vegas it's, like, actually, like, legal.
Well, I think prostitution is legal.
Really? I did not know that.
But prostitution is illegal in America, but, like, for example, like, strippers are all over America.
Yeah.
And, like, OnlyFans,
mm-hmm.
that's all over. And, like, I think if people, like, get rid of just those are, like, actual jobs where people are making income and it's not hurting anyone. So I don't think it should, like, be outlawed because what they're doing is only helping them. And it's, like, people are paying for it, so clearly they want what they're giving to them.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a win-win.
Right. And prostitution, I looked it up. It's illegal in every state but Nevada. And it's only a few counties in Nevada.
Yeah, I think it's, like, Las Vegas area. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think what's, like, a lot of times when it comes to sex work, there's, like, two very different, like, polarizing sides. And mm-hmm. it's, like, okay, completely, like, make it illegal because... And that's kind of what McKinnon would say, where she thinks that... that's the next question. Like, how does the empowerment of sex workers relate to McKinnon's theory of male dominance through sexuality? So, like, she would say that, like, sex work should be illegal because even if you consent to doing something, you're still embracing this, like, idea where men are dominant and, like, they dictate what female sexuality should be.
Right.
So that's one side of the argument, and then there's the opposite side of, like, well, these women are, like, helpless, like, they're victims, you know, like, things like that, and, like, this shouldn't be whatever. But I think, like, what the article talks about, too, is, like, a lot of times it's somewhere in the middle. It's, like, I think she says, like, deliberate but not intentional or something like that. Or, like, deliberate but not, like, consenting to it. Like, something where it's, like, or deliberate but not by choice. That's what it is. You can, like, make, you can do something deliberately, you know, like, you know you're doing this, right. You are, like, consenting to this, but you're not, like, choosing to do this, like, you're not, like, empowered by this, like, right. It's just something that, like,
it's something you have to do, yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like, yeah, that can, like, a lot of times, like, not be talked about a lot, mm-hmm. Like, it's either, like, people who are, like human trafficked, and they're, like, right. Forced into this industry, or there's, like, people who love doing it, you know, right. But, like, there's oftentimes, like, a middle ground when it comes to that.
Bye, guys.
Bye. Thank you.